The the core of today's session is about goal setting. We've talked about planning quite frequently, but um, before we plan, we need to know what our goal is because we need to know where we're headed. So I sort of wanted to cover that today and talk a little bit about goals and setting goals. I'll start though by going back and looking at COVID-19. Um, as you know, I've been sort of following this along, uh, and it wasn't a huge amount of change, but there was a a growth in the death numbers uh, between January and February. March hasn't March hasn't yet been. Let me see. Uh, there we go. All right. Uh, so March numbers haven't come out, of course, but the February numbers showed that there had been an uptick. And right now, everybody says, well, COVID isn't a big deal, but 4.3% of the reported deaths in the United States are from COVID and COVID related. So it's still out there. But the good news is hospitalizations are down 10% from the beginning of the year, and ER cases are down 14.6. So if we're going to have any sort of big numbers this year, that's probably in the past. It'll probably be a lot less going forward. But the other things that are still out there, RSV and the regular flu, are very prevalent this year, and not just in the US, but in all of North America. So I wanted to go back on one other thing. For those of you who attend regularly, you'll remember that back in January, I talked about the uh, autonomous cars and how they were doing. And Waymo at that time uh, was doing quite well. Several other autonomous car companies who were providing taxi services in some major cities had been forced to shut down because of accidents. Waymo has been the leader. They've been doing better than others, and but they were limited to San Francisco and Phoenix, and L.A. and Austin were in their future, but they were seeking permission in Arizona to expand their coverage beyond Phoenix to include driving on interstate highways. None of the autonomous vehicles have been approved for driving on interstates. So another update on this that's just happened in the last week is that Waymo has now been given clearance to service cities surrounding Phoenix. So if you're in Chandler, Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, Goodyear, Glendale, and Surprise, you can call Waymo and get an autonomous taxi to pick you up and take you to your destination. They're allowed to drive on expressways and on the interstate, but they can only drive up to 55 miles per hour. So they'll probably be in the right-hand lane and driving a bit under the legal limit. In California, where people thought, well, they'll probably just get snuffed like the other car companies, they've applied for and they are now granted by the state of California the ability to serve all the way down the peninsula to San Jose from San Francisco. And they have been licensed to open shop in Los Angeles and in San Mateo County down in the southern part of California. So their business is expanding. They have, I'm trying to remember the exact number, but I believe it's somewhere around 3 million different trips that they've made, and they have 2 reported minor accidents. They were fender benders, and they weren't the Waymo car's fault. Other cars ran into them. So that's good news. I think if you're thinking and looking forward at autonomous vehicles. The trucking industry is very involved with this. They want to move forward faster, and the U.S. government is looking at creating special lanes on some of the east, west, and north, south major corridors for autonomous vehicles, so that trucks could get into those lanes and be driven automatically, and they wouldn't have to worry about automobiles and the regular traffic interfering with them. So that's starting to hit the drawing boards, but it hasn't been enacted yet. It's just discussion. Someone had asked about the automotive industry and what's going on with the automotive industry. In 2022, it's the last year that we have complete numbers, China produced more automobiles than any other country, and they produced about 12 million cars. The United States was second, and Japan was right behind the US. Both of them were over 8 million cars each. And then Mexico was seventh overall with about 3.2 or 3.3. Mexico was almost tied with India and one other country, South Korea. So Mexico is in pretty good shape as far as car manufacturing is concerned. They're turning out a lot of new cars, but they're still ranked number 7. So what's going on with the industry? Is it going away, or is it going to change? Well, it's growing, but there's a lot of change. If you watch the car ads, it's hard to find a sedan like your mom and dad drove, or like I drove. But that's not the only change. You've got electric vehicles, and 7.6% of the new cars in 2023 were electric vehicles. And I was talking to my granddaughter about that the other day. We were driving here in El Paso, and we were looking at the number of Teslas that are on the streets. And it's really interesting, because when you start looking for them, they start popping out, and you start seeing how many are out there. And that doesn't include the other car manufacturers that are bringing electric vehicles and hybrids. Hybrids isn't on my list here because they're still considered to be gas-powered vehicles. But I drive a hybrid. I get 50 miles to a gallon of gas, and the car's 7 years old and still performing very well. Autonomous vehicles, the perspective right now is that there was a 23% growth in autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles in 2023. And that ties back to what we were just talking about with Waymo and some of the other taxi companies that are still in business. They're trying to get their software better designed so that they don't have as many accidents, and they can do more accident avoidance. Cars are becoming portable computers. I mean, when you stop to think about it, you have your radio, which in most cars now is a computer that communicates with a satellite and brings you radio, but it also brings you a lot of other entertainment opportunities as well. You can patch your cell phone into it and use it for conversations or for playing movies that you've recorded on your cell phone, although I don't think watching a movie while you're driving a car is necessarily a good way to split your attention. But you can do Wi-Fi on it. You have monitoring within the car for maintenance, and you've got security. And all of those are tied back to computer and computer enhanced operations of the vehicle. So we're doing quite well. Global demand for cars is up. But one of the things that countries are pushing hard on is they want the cars to be made so that more of them can be recycled. And I don't mean more cars can be recycled, but more of each car can be recycled rather than going to a dump. So the automotive industry has its challenges, but it's still growing and it's still moving forward rather quickly. Shipping continues to be difficult when we're talking about moving stuff around using the oceans of the world. The war uh, between Israel and Hamas has created a lot of antipathy, anger, and so trying to get in and out of the Red Sea so that you can get to the Suez Canal still difficult. In the last couple of days, the rebels in Yemen fired a missile at a British ship that killed two of the crew members. So we can expect that that isn't going to ease up anytime soon. It's going to continue to be a hot spot, and that affects all of the shipping coming from China headed for Europe, or India headed for Europe, or going to South America or to Africa, to Northern Africa. So there's a lot of money being spent because of the higher insurance that each of the ships have to pay if they go that way. But if they go around the Horn of Africa, then it's 10 to 12 more days of time on the water, and they're paying the cost for extra fuel and for the personnel costs. So any way you go, shipping costs are going up. The volumes are lower, and this is kind of good. And those of you who have been with us for a year or two, you'll remember when we were talking about 48 days waiting to get a berth in Los Angeles, and that wait time is down to under 2 days today. So that sort of shows, two things have happened. They expanded the facilities and put in another automated unloading and loading dock, which helped. Adding capacity is always a good thing, but there's also a reduction in the volume, the number of ships that are coming in. So that has been impacted by the reduction in trade between China and the U.S., and it's also been impacted by the number of ships that are moving containers and full loads of containers. So the wait time is down. The dwell time to unload in LA right now is about 4 days. In other words, the ship comes in, it gets to the dock, they get it moored and tied down. Then it'll take 4 days for them to empty the ship. And then it'll take 9 more days for them to load the new load in and make sure that it's properly balanced and where they want it. So it's 2 days wait time, 13 days in port before it leaves the port. So you've got a total of about 15 days that a ship would be tied up, coming in, unloading, reloading, and getting out of LA. So what we wanted to talk about today is setting your goals. And so then the question is, so what are your goals? Is it a healthier lifestyle, higher earnings, new home? When we think of goals come in a number with a number of horizons. So you have to think about what is it you want to do and how do you get started. A healthier lifestyle, you can start that today, but how long do you have to live that way to see the impact? And if you want higher earnings, how do you get higher earnings? You get promoted. If you're staying with the same company, you bid out to a different company and get a better position. But in order to do that, you need to have a resume that's updated, that's got some stuff on it. And if you're 40 years old and you graduated from college 19 years ago and you haven't added anything to your resume since then, it's really hard to get that next step and to get to the higher earnings. So you have to set your goal and say, yeah, I want to earn more money. Then the plan is, how am I going to do that? Do you want a new home? A lot of us have been apartment dwellers or are apartment dwellers. We'd like to have our own home. Okay. What's that going to take? What are you going to have to do? But your goal has to be set. What kind of home do you need? What kind of home do you want? Where would you like it? Do you want to stay in El Paso? Do you want to move to Las Cruces? Do you want it in this country or do you want it in some other country? So there are things that have to be decided. And so your goal has to be more than just, yeah, I want to make some more money. That's not going to get you there. You have to think it through. You have to understand what needs to be done. And then you have to get persistent. But this is a good time to start. We just finished February. We've started March. Most of us have forgotten what it was we said we were going to do as our New Year's resolutions. I am not included in that group. I did not make any New Year's resolutions. I've forgotten them for too many years. So I decided, why go through all of that all of that travail? There's no reason for it. Just don't do it. But I do have goals, and I've set some goals. So if you're thinking about this, you've got about 10 more months this year. If you've got a goal that you want to get something you want to get done this year, you got 10 months to do it. So let's say you want to lose a few pounds. You want to have a healthier lifestyle. So you're going to start walking. And you can start today and keep going and you'll get there. This is sort of my map to say, yeah, you can do this. In March of 1978, I was talking to my friend, Billy Arcoloni. He and I went to high school together. We ran in high school and he came by my work and we were talking and he said, I'm going to run a 10K. For those of you who don't run, that's 6.2 miles. He said, I'm going to run a 10K this weekend. Do you want to go with me? And I said, Billy, I haven't had running shoes on since we graduated from high school. He said, well, you need to go get some running shoes and you need to start running again. He said, because if you don't, you're going to end up like your dad. My dad died at 46 of a heart attack. I said, yeah, that's not what I want. Okay. So in March, in 1978, I started running. I ran 100 yards the first day. I walked home. I went out the next day. I ran another 100 yards, but I've kept at it with just a few significant breaks. I had non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I was in chemo that wouldn't allow me to run. I had a really bad case of shin splints one time, and I had to stop running for about 3 months. But other than that, I have run consistently for 46 years. And I can still go out and I can still run. Well, as soon as the doctor lets me, I'll be back to running and I'll be out there running 10Ks. In March of 1987, I was relatively unhappy, but I had met a woman and I wanted to marry. And we got married later that year, and we are happier now than we were 37 years ago. So, but you have to have goals. You have to figure that out. Now, in December, 5 of us from the chapter took a certification exam. And in March, a little bit later, I think it's the 24th of this month, we'll find out if we earned our certification. We were part of the beta group that we were challenged by ASCM to take the exam and go through all of that, then they didn't have cut scores or anything for to know what passing would be or what failing would be. So uh, they got a group of us, probably a couple of hundred APICS ASCM instructors, and said, if you would do this, we would appreciate it. So we did. And since then, they've had other people taking the exam from a more varied background. And now they'll take all of the results from that and they'll go through and figure out whether we passed or failed. The thing that we all know is that by the end of this year, all 5 of us will have that certification, because if we didn't get it on the first round because we didn't study enough, we didn't know, then we'll have another chance, and we'll take that chance, and I'm sure that we'll all pass. So these are the kinds of things that happen. You set a goal. In 1978, when I was talking to Billy, I had no idea that I was going to run for the next 46 years. But because I've been running for 46 years, I've avoided a whole lot of health issues that other people haven't been able to avoid. It doesn't happen overnight. It took a long time for me to get to the point where I could go out and run. My daughter Debbie and I have run marathons together. That's 26.2 miles. And that's, if you want to run a marathon, you need to start a year in advance, because it takes that long to get your muscles in shape to run that far. So how do you do it? How do you set the goal, and then what do? Well, the first thing you need is you need commitment. And a friend of mine used to say all the time, when you think about commitment, you're talking the chicken and the pig. When you sit down at breakfast, you have bacon and eggs. The chicken supported your breakfast. The pig was committed. And you have to have that level of commitment. You have to go all in and say, we're going to do this. We're committed. We're going to do whatever it takes to get this done. Another truth of this is need will outweigh want. If you need to do something, your doctor says, you're starting to, you're starting to you're pre-diabetic, you're putting on a lot of weight. You need to change your lifestyle. That's going to be more motivation than, gee, I want to be a few pounds thinner. In my life, I've lost weight 2 or 3 different times, but it's really hard to work on losing 1 or 2 or 3 pounds. You cannot get committed to that. You may want to, but you haven't defined the need. If you're out there and it's 15, 20 pounds and you're talking about a whole new wardrobe, then you'll put everything you need to do together, and you'll build that internal commitment. So you'll go ahead and you'll succeed. You need to be consistent, and consistent doesn't mean boredom. It's not the same as boredom. You can vary your diet a lot. You can vary how you do things a lot. You can go to the gym, you can run, you can bicycle, you can go out and walk, you can play with the kids in the yard, you can do all kinds of different things. Just getting physical motion back in is one of the ways that we work to keep our movement up and keep our burn rate on calories down. You need to have more supporters than detractors. You don't need to worry about that. Come on, have one more beer. That's not supportive. That's detracting and getting you off the mark. Listening to the people who say, I tried that and it didn't work, so I'm not gonna, I don't think you need to spend time with that. Okay, that was their experience. Is your experience going to be the same, or are you going to make it different? So you need to do that. Once you've set the goal, and once you figured out what it is you want to do and have an idea about that, then you can start putting together the plan. How am I going to make this work? Now, I'm talking about what happens to you physically, but the same thing happens in work. Somebody says, we want to reduce our inventory by 20%. Are we going to be able to do it this month? No. Why? Because our orders are already placed with our suppliers and they're coming in, and our orders for consumption are already uh, in hand from our customers, and we're building to those things, and we've got our schedule. We're going to have to plan how we're going to go about reducing that inventory. If it's all slow moving, non moving, it's going to be more difficult, right? Because it's slow moving, non moving. It's going to take a longer period of time. So we then have a goal, but now we have to put the plan in place to make that happen. But that's for another day. Today, I want you to think about your goals, and I want you to think in terms of you want to earn more money. In order to do that, you have to show some growth. You have to show that you're current. How do you do that? You take a class. You come to ASCM, you go to Coursera online, you go to UTEP, you go to EPCC, and you take a class and you learn something, and it goes into your resume. And that says, I haven't stopped. I graduated from high school, I went to college, I graduated from college, and now here I am, I'm out in the marketplace and I'm still growing. Some questions that came in, we talked about the future of the automotive industry. It's still strong. Some strategies for purchasing, we'll talk about that next time. Local manufacturing, economic development. There's a huge amount of time and energy going into economic development. I was tied up for most of the day yesterday working with a group of about 50 people. We're putting together a proposal, and if we get it, it'll be a $50 million grant for the city of El Paso. And it's all focused on economic development and getting more people to work. So it's a big project, but one that would be very helpful to the people, especially it's El Paso County, so people in the lower valley, people looking for single moms that are looking for how they can get out and get a job that pays better, and that's sort of the focus of where that money is going to be spent. AI, a lot of stuff on AI. We can talk about how it works in the supply chain next time. Work-life balance, that's what I sort of started with my goals today. And I think that you need to look at that and talk to your significant other and say, what do we want to do here as far as work and life balance, and what do we need to do to make things better? 2024 looks like it's going to be just an incredible year. There's all the economic indicators are way up, and it looks like we're just going to have Molly bar the door kind of year. And then CSCP certification, I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about the exam and how to take it. Next week, we're going to have another brief webinar at noon on March 13th, talking about the foundations of supply chain. It's a new course that ASCM has put together, and allows you to pick and choose what you want to study, so you can study the things that are specific to your need. So we're going to be talking about that next week. Make sure that you register for the event. If you have any questions, talk to Deanna. On the 17th of April, we're going to have an in-person PDM. That's a professional development meeting in Juarez at the Holiday Inn at 6 o'clock. And Luis Raul Martinez is going to be our speaker. The program will be in Spanish. So If you want to attend, we'll be there. And then we've got foundations, certifications, and the demand-driven. All of these are coming to you. There are classes that we're going to be holding, and you get to see the dates here. Thank you for attending, and by my watch, I have not kept you overtime today. So one complaint gone. Have a great week, a great month, and we hope to see you back here next month. Don't forget, next week we'll be here talking about foundations.
Thanks again, Chet.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chet.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Have a good
You as
weekend.
well. Thank you.
Thank you.